My name is Ava Mitchell. I'm 23 years old, and at my own graduation, my sister stood up and tried to end my life with one sentence. I was 3 steps from the podium when her chair scraped back, sharp enough to freeze the entire auditorium. Sienna pointed at me, voice blasting through the microphone. "She cheated her way through college!" Gasps, phones rising, hundreds of eyes burning into me, and none of them knew I'd been waiting for her to make that mistake. Before I tell you what happened after my sister tried to ruin my graduation, tell me where you're watching from. I always read the comments. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by your own family. Trust me, this story doesn't go where you think it does, and it didn't start on that stage. I didn't grow up thinking my sister would become my enemy. If anything, I spent most of my childhood trying to orbit close enough to her light without getting burned. Our house in Maple Grove was small, but the favoritism filled every corner like humidity. Thick, warm, impossible to ignore. Mum used to call Sienna her bright one, her future star, and the rest of us were expected to clap on cue. Some of my earliest memories are of our kitchen table. Yellow overhead light, mismatched plates, the faint smell of garlic bread from the oven. I'd sit quietly while Sienna launched into a dramatic retelling of her day. She could talk about a spelling quiz and make it sound like the Olympics. Mom leaned in, eyes shining, refilling Sienna's water before the glass was even empty. Meanwhile, I'd ask for salt twice before anyone heard me. Dad would pat my hand and say, "Speak up, kiddo," as if the whole room wasn't built around amplifying only one voice. I didn't know it then, but that little silence, the gap between asking and being acknowledged, was the first place where things started cracking. When I was 11, an accident happened. A warm summer night, the kind where the sky feels gigantic and the air smells like cut grass. Sienna had just gotten her learner's permit and begged Dad to let her try driving down the driveway. He said no. She waited until he went inside. I remember standing near the mailbox, hearing the engine rev too hard, hearing her laugh as she rolled forward. Then a blur, our neighbour's kid Jason biking past, and the sickening thud, like a fist hitting wet cardboard. The bike skidded, Jason toppled, Sienna froze. I screamed for Mum. She came running, robe untied, panic melting into calculation faster than I could take a breath. She crouched next to him, checked his arm, broken, and then turned to me with a sharp whisper I still hear in my dreams. "You didn't see anything. He fell. That's the story." Sienna stared at Mum like she'd hung the moon. I stared at both of them like the world had tilted sideways. That night, Mum took me into the garage, shut the door, and said something that carved itself into my spine. "Your sister is fragile. She can't handle the consequences the way you can. Be smart. Protect her." I swallowed it, but it was deeper than I realized. By junior year of high school, the patterns were fully formed. I studied every night, earbuds in, while Sienna drifted through classes, skipping assignments, pulling all-nighters only for outfits and Instagram captions. Still, she was the pride of the family. I was the steady one, which is just code for the one we don't worry about. Until the day my GPA overtook hers. It happened after midterms. They posted class rankings on a bulletin board outside the main office. I was first. My hands shook reading it, not out of pride, out of fear of the conversation waiting at home. When I showed Mum, she smiled tightly. "Good job, sweetie, but don't brag. Your sister's been under so much pressure." She didn't hug me. She hugged Sienna, who hadn't even read the rankings. That night at dinner, Dad asked Sienna about her weekend plans. He didn't ask about my award ceremony the next morning. When I reminded him, he blinked like he was remembering something from a dream. "Right, sure, we'll see if we can make it." They didn't, but they posted Sienna's brunch photos online with captions about supporting our girl. I didn't know it then, but that was the first time I understood I would never be celebrated in the same language. The scholarship letter arrived 2 months later. A thick envelope, embossed seal, my name printed clean and sharp. I opened it sitting on my bedroom carpet, the cheapest blue carpet you've ever seen, the kind that burns your knees if you kneel too fast. Full scholarship, neuroscience program, Westbridge University. I ran to show Sienna first. She hugged me tightly, too tightly, nails pressing into my back. Wow, she said. Full ride? Must be nice not to have to struggle for anything. Something in her tone made the air go stale. Later, walking past the bathroom, I saw her holding the letter's photo, one I asked her to take of me, and crumpling it slowly, like she wanted to feel it collapse inch by inch. I didn't confront her. I told myself she was stressed or jealous or scared I'd leave. I told myself anything that kept the peace. I didn't know it at the time, but that moment, that tiny, silent betrayal, would come back to haunt both of us. Leaving for Westbridge felt like slipping out of a life that never quite fit. The morning I moved into my dorm, the sky over Oregon was washed out blue, the kind that looks tired even at noon. Mum hugged me stiffly, Dad carried one box, and Sienna stayed in the car, sunglasses on, scrolling. When I waved goodbye, she didn't look up. I told myself she was emotional. I told myself a lot of things back then. My roommate, Maya Brooks, was the first person who saw me without the family filter. She opened the door with paint still wet on her hands, hair up in a messy bun, and said, "You look like someone who needs actual sunlight. Come on, we're opening the blinds." She spoke with the kind of confidence that made you believe her before you even decided to. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. Those first months at Westbridge tasted like burnt coffee and possibility. Late-night study marathons in the library, wind cutting across the quad at 2 a.m., the hum of vending machines that never quite shut up. Maya would sit on her bed, cross-legged, watching me highlight textbooks until she finally muttered, "If you don't get a 4.0, the universe is rigged." Back home, things were shifting. Mum called more often, not to check on me, but to give updates on Sienna, how she dropped out of her marketing program, how she just needed space, how she was finding herself. The tone was always the same, worry wrapped in justification. Then the questions started drifting over to me. "Ava, honey, you're not overworking yourself, right? Sienna thinks you're taking on too much. She said she's worried about you." Worried? Sienna had never worried about me in her life. Still, I swallowed it, because swallowing was the family currency. That Thanksgiving, I went home for the first time. The house felt smaller, or maybe I had finally grown. The walls still held the same framed photos, Sienna at dance recitals, Sienna at prom, Sienna posing with sparklers on the 4th of July. My own pictures were sprinkled in like reluctant punctuation. At dinner, under the glow of the same old chandelier, relatives asked about Sienna first, then tacked on a quick, "And school's good for you too, right, Ava?" before moving on. Later that night, Sienna sat beside me on the couch, leaning close like we were childhood friends again. "I told everyone I helped you get into Westbridge," she said casually. "It just makes the story cleaner. You don't mind, right?" I felt something cold settle under my ribs. "Why would you say that?" She shrugged. "People like narratives. You're the academic one. I'm the creative one. It balances us." It didn't feel like balance. It felt like erasure dressed as flattery. But I nodded anyway. I didn't know it back then, but that tiny lie, the one she tossed out like confetti, was the seed of everything that came later. The year before graduation was when the cracks started widening. I felt them before I saw them. A strange shift in Sienna's voice during calls. A too long pause when I mentioned my research. A comment from Mom. "You know, sweetheart, maybe don't brag so much. Your sister's been having a tough time." I hadn't bragged. I had just answered a question. Then Sienna started asking more curious things. How did scholarships get dispersed? Did I still use the same password patterns? How did Westbridge verify student identity? I brushed it off as her being nosy, or maybe trying to go back to school herself. If only. Around that same time, Maya introduced me to Eli Turner, her friend from another dorm, the cybersecurity guy with the quiet voice and sharp eyes. We met at a small campus cafe, the place with sticky tables and cinnamon rolls that always burned on the bottom. I joked I needed someone to guard my thesis from the universe. He laughed, told me the universe was the least of my problems, then turned red like he'd said too much. I didn't know then how right he was. Looking back, there were warning signs everywhere. The extra long pauses on calls with Mom. The way Sienna's mood flipped from syrupy sweet to icy cold when I talked about internships. The way she asked for a photo of my student ID to show a friend, and how my stomach twisted even as I sent it. But I was trained, conditioned, really, to assume the best of her, to assume she loved me the way I loved her, to assume she would never take silence as permission. I didn't know it then, but every small compromise, every ignored instinct, every moment I shrank myself, was leading directly to the day my sister would stand up in a crowded auditorium and try to set my future on fire. And that's where everything truly began. The first real hit landed quietly, the way most disasters do. It was a Thursday morning near mid-semester, fog still clinging to the edges of the Westbridge quad. I remember walking into the financial aid office because my scholarship deposit looked wrong. $200 short, not a huge number, but enough that my stomach tightened. I stood in line between a guy who smelled like weed and a girl crying into her sleeve about tuition appeals. It felt like a normal college inconvenience, nothing more.
"Your account shows the correct amount,"
the clerk said, tapping her keyboard with long, glittery nails. The system processed an adjustment last week. What adjustment? She shrugged, the way people do when they don't care. It doesn't specify. I walked out into the cold, gripping the printout she gave me. The numbers looked right, but felt wrong. Something in my chest buzzed with unease, but I pushed it down. Bureaucracy happens, I told myself. It wasn't a big deal. I didn't know the adjustment wasn't an error. It was a test balloon, someone checking whether I'd notice. A week later came the email. At 2:13 a.m., according to the timestamp, sent from my account to Professor Alden, politely cancelling my capstone review and requesting to reschedule closer to finals. I saw it at breakfast, when Maya slid my laptop across the table with raised eyebrows. "Since when do you cancel capstone reviews in the middle of the night?" she said around a mouthful of yogurt.
"I didn't cancel anything."
My voice sounded too flat, even to me. We stared at the email. It was written in a tone that resembled mine, but cleaner. Too clean. No typos, no rambling qualifiers, no emojis I sometimes used when I felt bad about changing plans. It was me, but not me, and the uncanny detail made my skin crawl. I marched to Alden's office. He sat behind his massive oak desk, surrounded by stacks of research journals and half-empty mugs that smelled like burnt coffee and exhaustion. "You sure you want to cancel this close to graduation?" he asked without looking up. "I didn't send that email." He finally raised his eyes, studying me like a specimen. "If you say so, just make sure your story stays straight. These things get messy." Something in my chest cracked. I'd never lied to him. I'd never lied to anyone at Westbridge. But suspicion sat between us now, a third person in the room. When I walked out, the hallway felt too bright, too loud, too hostile. That was the first moment I felt my reputation tilting. Quietly, almost imperceptibly, like a picture frame slipping on a nail. The second moment came fast. A rumour started circulating in the behavioural science building that I had bought one of my earlier papers. I overheard 2 students talking near the vending machines. "Yeah, apparently she aced that stats assignment because she hired someone from that essay site." I froze. They didn't notice me. When I walked into the lab group that afternoon, the room went strangely quiet. Not silent, just rearranged. A girl I'd worked with for 2 semesters suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. 2 guys huddled over someone's phone, glancing up at me with that half-curious, half-judgmental look people get when they're deciding whether a rumour feels true. Then Maya sent me a link. "Ava, I think you need to see this." It was an anonymous Instagram account, one of those Westbridge tea pages that mostly posted memes and cafeteria fails. But this time they'd posted a video. Grainy, shaky, clearly filmed from behind a stack of library books. It showed me at a table, typing, then cut to a clip of another student's paper on a different screen. Someone had edited them together sloppily, but not so sloppily that a casual viewer would question it. Caption: Funny how some students climb the GPA ladder. For a second, everything inside me went silent. Not numb, silent, like my body was trying to protect me from the meaning. "This is edited," Maya whispered. "This is straight up malicious." But the comments didn't care. LMAO didn't expect it from her. Knew she was too perfect. Should have guessed. I closed my phone. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. I told myself it didn't matter, that the people who knew me wouldn't believe it. But that's the thing. Nobody really knows anyone in college. Not deeply. Not enough to fight for them. Most people just go with whatever story is loudest. The loudest story wasn't mine. And then came the call from Mum. She sounded cheerful at first, asking about the weather, about Maya, about whether I'd lost weight. "You sound tired, sweetheart." But then her voice tightened. "Your aunt said she heard something about you having issues at school." I felt the air leave my lungs. "What issues?" "You tell me. I just want to make sure you're not cutting corners. It's easy to get desperate under pressure. You really think I would cheat?" She paused, just long enough to confirm everything. "I think you're ambitious, and sometimes ambition clouds judgment." Something hot and ugly rose in my throat. My own mother, who had covered up Sienna's literal crime years ago, could imagine me falsifying a paper, could imagine me as the problem. It hit harder than every rumour combined. I went to bed that night replaying the conversation on loop, each sentence peeling away another layer of the person I thought I was in her eyes. But the worst was still coming, because the next blow didn't come from strangers, or professors, or the internet. It came from my own login screen. The night everything finally snapped, campus was unusually quiet. A thin rain tapped against the windows of our studio, the kind that sounded like fingertips drumming on glass. I sat on my bed with my laptop, trying to finish a draft of my capstone report. It was past midnight. My brain felt like a frayed wire, sparking, overstimulated, ready to burn out. I typed my password into the portal. Incorrect. I tried again, slower. Incorrect. A third time, my hands shaking now, breath stuck tight in my chest. "Your account has been temporarily locked due to suspicious activity." The message pulsed red on the screen, like a warning I'd ignored for too long. I stared at it for a full minute before my body remembered how to move. Maya woke up at the sound of my chair scraping back. "What's wrong?" "My account. Someone locked me out." My voice came out thin, almost childlike. I can't get in." She sat up instantly, hair messy, sleep forgotten. "Ava, this isn't random. Someone is doing this on purpose. Someone is targeting you." Targeting. The word made my skin crawl. Until that moment, I'd still been telling myself maybe the universe was misfiring, maybe the systems were glitching, maybe I was imagining patterns where there were none. But patterns don't hack accounts. People do. "You need help," Maya said. "Real help. Call Eli." I should have hesitated. I should have at least taken a second to breathe. But something in me had already crossed a threshold. The version of myself who always gave people the benefit of the doubt, the version who protected Sienna at any cost, was slipping away. I texted him. "Can you look at something for me? It's urgent." He replied in less than a minute. "Meet me at the cafe. 30 minutes. The campus cafe was mostly empty at 1 a.m. Only the hum of the espresso machine and the buzz of the neon open sign kept the place alive. Eli was already there, laptop open, fingers tapping a nervous rhythm on the table. "What happened?" he asked. I showed him everything. The email I didn't send, the scholarship adjustment, the rumours, the video, the locked portal. I didn't mention Sienna, not yet. Saying her name felt like speaking a curse aloud. He listened without interrupting, eyes focused, expression tightening more with every detail. "Ava," he finally said, "this isn't just harassment. Whoever is doing this has access. Deep access." My breath stuttered. "But how? I don't share passwords. I change them. He held up a hand. "Let's start with your logs." We walked across campus to his workspace, A cramped room filled with monitors, blinking routers, cables snaking across the floor like vines. Warm, dusty air. The faint smell of solder. It felt like stepping into the inside of a machine. He asked for my authorization, then pulled up a series of login histories. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, timestamps blinking like tiny, brutal truths. "These logins here are yours," he said. "These 3 aren't." My mouth went dry. "But they're using my password." "Not exactly." He zoomed in. "They're using a mirrored access point. It's sophisticated, not beginner stuff." "Meaning?" "Meaning someone knows your habits, your patterns, your security questions." A cold wave slid down my spine. He opened another window. "This is the IP trace. It's bouncing around, but the origin is here." He clicked. A map appeared. A familiar neighborhood lit up. Maple Grove. My parents' street. "No," I whispered. "That can't be right. My parents don't even know how to reset their email." "Your parents didn't do this," Eli said gently, "but someone on their network did." Every bone in my body went still. There was only one person in that house who knew my childhood passwords. My favorite teacher, my first pet, the color of my bike, the name of the neighbor's dog. All the stupid details security questions use. Details only sisters share. My throat closed. "It can't be her," I said, barely audible. "Please tell me it's not her." Eli didn't answer. He didn't have to. He pulled up one more file, an old device registry. My stomach twisted as soon as I saw it. "This device logged into your student portal," he clicked. "It also logged into an Instagram account in 2021. Username, sienna.mitchell." The room spun. I grabbed the edge of the desk to steady myself. My heartbeat echoed in my ears, loud, panicked, disbelieving. A part of me still wanted to scream that it wasn't true, that there was a mistake, that she wouldn't do that. She couldn't. But evidence is merciless. And Eli wasn't done. "Look at this," he said quietly. "Your scholarship adjustments." The request was made twice. From the same IP, same device, same user agent. I shook my head. Why would she do this to me? Eli looked at me with an expression I didn't want to interpret. Sometimes the people closest to you get threatened when you grow. Sometimes they snap. Snap. That was the word. The perfect, horrifying word. I walked out of the workspace without saying goodbye. The night air slapped my face, cold and metallic. My legs felt rubbery, barely obeying me. I walked past dark classrooms, past the silent quad, past the library where strangers had filmed me to make it look like I was cheating. By the time I reached the edge of campus, my breath felt like shards of glass in my throat. My sister, my own sister, had been dismantling my life piece by piece while smiling at me through the phone. I had covered for her mistakes for years, protected her, carried her secrets, believed in her goodness even when she gave me every reason not to. And she repaid me by breaking into my accounts and dragging my name through the mud. That night, standing under a flickering street lamp, I realized something with brutal clarity. I had spent my whole life shrinking so she could shine. Now she was trying to set me on fire just to watch the glow. Graduation morning felt unreal, like someone had turned the world's saturation down a notch. The sky over Westbridge was a dull grey, the kind that promises rain but never delivers it. Students in blue robes crowded the courtyard, laughing, fixing tassels, hugging parents. I walked among them with my cap tucked under my arm and a sealed folder taped beneath my seat assignment. E17, just like Lauren instructed. "Stay quiet, stay steady," she'd told me over the phone the night before. "If anything happens, let the evidence speak." I didn't tell her that silence had been my entire childhood. I just nodded. Inside the auditorium, the air buzzed with spring heat and the murmur of hundreds of conversations. The stage lights glared harshly across the rows. Parents fanned themselves with printed programs. Cameras flashed. The orchestra tuned in the corner, the same note over and over, sharp enough to make my teeth ache. I spotted my family in the 5th row. Dad waved, trying too hard. Mum smiled a little too wide, the kind of smile she used when pretending everything was normal. And next to her, Sienna. Perfect hair, white blazer, red lipstick. She looked like she was attending a press conference about herself. Her eyes found mine. She smirked. It wasn't a smirk of confidence. It was a warning. A chill crawled up the back of my neck. I took my place on the stage with the honours students. My knees brushed the hem of my gown, hands tucked in my lap. The dean began the ceremony, voice booming, speeches folding into each other. People clapped at the right moments, cheered for the right jokes. Everything looked normal on the surface. But beneath the noise, something in the room vibrated, an anticipation I could feel like static along my skin. When they began calling names, the row in front of mine stood. Applause swelled. I tried to focus on breathing. In, out, in, out. My heart was still hammered, but my mind was clear for the first time in weeks. Then I heard it, a sharp scrape, metal legs dragging across the floor. It sliced through the auditorium like a blade. I didn't have to turn around. I knew the sound of her dramatics everywhere. Sienna stood. "Excuse me!" she shouted, voice cracking through the microphone system even though she wasn't near one. People turned, heads twisted. A wave of confused murmurs rippled outward. My stomach sank, but my face stayed still. She lifted a manicured finger and pointed directly at me. "She cheated her way through college!" Gasps exploded. Programs fluttered. A few students laughed in disbelief, thinking it was some kind of prank. But Sienna wasn't joking. Her chest rose and fell like she'd been waiting to unleash this. "She lied," she continued louder. "She hacked systems, stole assignments, manipulated grades. Ask her professors. Ask anyone." Phones rose like a field of glowing rectangles. A parent started recording. Another whispered, "Oh my God, who is she talking about?" The dean tried to speak, but the microphone crackled uselessly under the chaos. My ears rang. My cheeks burned. My legs felt like they were turning to stone. But then, something shifted. A cold calm washed through me, steady and deliberate, like someone was lowering a switch inside my chest. Sienna had finally done it. She had crossed the exact line Lauren predicted she would. I stood when my name was called. The room erupted, not with applause, but with tension so thick it choked the air. As I walked down the aisle, the surface of the world slowed. Sienna's voice blurred behind me, frantic, unhinged. "She doesn't deserve that diploma! She's been lying for years!" I didn't look at her. Every step felt measured, like I was walking into a destiny I'd been dragged toward my entire life. When I reached the stage, Dean Crawford stood frozen, expression strained. But when he looked at me, really looked at me, his features softened just enough. He handed me the diploma. "Congratulations," he said in a low voice. I leaned in just slightly. "Folder E17, under my seat." He didn't ask a single question, just nodded, slow, certain, understanding the gravity of what I'd said. That nod was the turning point, the moment the power shifted from chaos to truth. As I walked off the stage, 2 security staff members quietly approached my row. One bent down and retrieved the sealed envelope taped under the chair. They carried it straight to the dean. Meanwhile, Sienna's volume only escalated. "Are you people blind?" she shrieked. "She isn't denying it. She's just pretending to be innocent. She's been manipulating you all." The audience had started to turn. A woman in the second row whispered to her husband, "Why is she doing this at someone else's ceremony?" A professor muttered, "This is inappropriate." Someone lowered their phone, frowning. They weren't questioning me anymore. They were questioning her. Security gently approached Sienna. "Ma'am, we need you to step outside." "Don't touch me," she snapped, mascara streaking. "This whole school is corrupt." In the corner of my eye, I saw the dean open the envelope. His brows knit as he flipped through the pages. Eli's digital logs, the scholarship trail, the mirrored email, even the transcript of her argument with Maya. He closed the folder with a kind of exhausted finality. Sienna saw him. Her voice broke. You're believing her? She's nothing without me.
I finally turned to face her.
Our eyes locked, hers wild, mine steady. No, I said quietly. I'm finally nothing because of you. Her mouth fell open, stunned. Security escorted her out as she kept shouting, voice cracking under the weight of everything she'd unleashed. The doors slammed behind her, muffling the last of her screams. A strange stillness washed over the room. Not relief, not triumph. Something heavier, like everyone had just witnessed the breaking of a family they didn't understand. I stood there holding my diploma, breath shaking but controlled. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the quiet one. I was simply done. And Sienna had no idea what was coming next. The backstage didn't feel like the same building I'd just walked through. The noise of the ceremony faded into a distant hum, muffled by thick curtains and the low buzz of old fluorescent lights. The air smelled like dust and stage paint. Dean Crawford stood at a small folding table, with the sealed envelope now open beside him. His face was unreadable, but his hands told the truth. Steady, careful, deliberate. Lauren Finch arrived seconds later, heels clicking against the concrete floor. She carried herself like someone who never walked into a room she couldn't win. "Is that the full packet?" she asked, nodding to the folder. The dean exhaled slowly. "Logs, transaction trails, audio recordings." He looked at me with something between pity and respect. "This isn't just misconduct. This is calculated sabotage." Lauren flipped through the pages with quick, practiced eyes. "We'll file immediately. Academic board, civil action, restitution. This isn't going away quietly." Quietly. The irony almost made me laugh. Nothing about Sienna had ever been quiet. Not her triumphs, not her failures, and definitely not the storm she unleashed today. The following days moved with a strange, accelerated gravity. The board opened an investigation before the weekend ended. Eli submitted his digital report, timeline, device IDs, access logs. 2 professors came forward with suspicious emails they'd dismissed earlier. And then came the twist no one expected. Zoe Fields. Her name appeared in my inbox with a message that said only, "I think you'll need this." Attached was a written statement about the accident years ago, the one Mom had forced us all to bury. Zoe had overheard everything. She had a memory of Sienna laughing afterward, saying, "Nothing ever sticks to me." Lauren nearly smiled when she read it. Patterns matter. Judges love patterns. Meanwhile, at home, my mother left voicemail after voicemail. Her voice trembled, skirting around the word responsibility with Olympic precision. Dad sounded tired, older. "I should have seen it," he told me one night. I didn't answer. Some truths aren't meant to be comforted. Days later, as I packed for Seattle, new internship, new apartment, new air, I caught myself staring at the folder on my desk. Not with fear, not with pride, with clarity. They thought graduation was the end of the story. But all they did was hand me the one weapon I'd been too afraid to use, and the real reckoning hadn't even started. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, if you've ever been told to stay quiet just to keep the peace, then you already understand more of my story than you think. I spent years shrinking myself so someone else could feel bigger, until the truth finally forced its way out. And if you're standing where I once stood, wondering whether speaking up is worth the fallout, trust me, silence costs more. Subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. This story isn't over.